You ever wonder if there's one single decade that more than any other decides the entire rest of your financial life? A time when the choices you make just have this outsized impact on whether you retire comfortable or totally stressed? Well, the data is crystal clear, and the answer is a big yes. That decade, it's your 40s. And understanding why that is, well, that can change everything for you.
So let me tell you a quick story about two brothers. They had the same upbringing, went to the same schools, and had almost identical careers and salaries their whole lives. But look where they ended up at 65. One brother is completely financially free with $1.4 million in the bank. The other? He's struggling with just 180 grand, and he's still working part-time just to make ends meet.
So you have to ask, right? With the exact same earning power, how on earth do you end up with a massive $1.2 million gap? I mean, this wasn't about winning the lottery or some secret stock tip. It was something way more subtle, but way more powerful.
And here's the answer. The entire difference, that whole $1.2 million gap, was created by the decisions they each made during one single 10-year stretch, their 40s. The path was basically set during this one critical decade. And the craziest part is, neither of them probably even realized it was happening.
And that brings us to the whole point of this explainer, what I call the decade of leverage. We're going to break down exactly why your 40s are this unique financial turning point, a time when a few key forces all come together to give you an opportunity that you just won't get again.
So there are three powerful forces that all slam together in your 40s, creating this amazing window. First, you're usually at or near your peak earning power. You're making more money than you ever have before. Second, you still have a really long runway of compounding time left before you retire. And third, for a lot of people, this is a time of expense stabilization. Maybe the huge costs of daycare are finally ending, and for the first time, you actually have some breathing room in your budget.
Okay, let's really focus on that compounding time thing. It's basically your money having babies, and then those babies go on to have their own babies. At age 40, you've got about 25 years until a typical retirement. That's enough time for every single dollar you invest to potentially turn into $4, just based on historical returns. Think about that. It's a 4x multiplier on every dollar you save.
But watch what happens if you wait. If you invest that same dollar when you're 50, you've only got 15 years for it to work its magic. And that multiplier, it drops from 4x all the way down to just 2.5x. A dollar you invest when you're 42 just works so much harder than a dollar you invest at 52. You literally can't make up for that lost time. And this brings us to the unforgiving math of this decade. We're about to look at some hard numbers that are going to make this whole idea of leverage feel very, very real. You're going to see how choices that seem pretty small at the time can create these absolutely massive gaps down the road.
Just look at this chart. It lays out the stark reality. If you save a consistent 15% of your income starting at age 40, you could end up with around $1.35 million by retirement. But if you let that savings rate slip to just 5% during this critical decade, your final number plummets to $780 grand. And if you only manage 2%, you're looking at less than $600,000? Here's the key. You simply can't catch up in your 50s to fix a bad decade in your 40s. The math just doesn't work.
All right, so what are these big, game-changing choices? Let's dive into what I call the $5 million decisions. These are the specific areas where the moves you make in your 40s have this huge, compounding ripple effect on the rest of your life.
And here they are. You've got housing and vehicles. For most people, these are the two biggest budget items hands down. Then children's expenses, especially college, which can feel like an absolute black hole for money. You've also got career risk. Do you play it safe, or do you take a calculated risk for a much bigger long-term payoff? And finally, the big one that sits underneath all of them, lifestyle inflation. This is that sneaky trap of letting your spending grow right along with your paycheck, which is so tempting in your 40s when you feel like you've finally arrived. Let's just use housing as a perfect example of how this all works. In your 40s, man, that urge to upgrade the family home is powerful. The kids are getting bigger, your salary is higher, and all your friends are doing it. You might look at an extra monthly cost of, say, $1,800 for a bigger mortgage and all the associated costs, and you think, yeah, we can swing that.
But here's the question that almost nobody stops to ask. What is the real cost? I'm not talking about the monthly payment. I'm talking about the opportunity cost. What is this decision really costing your future freedom? And here it is, this staggering truth. That $1,800 a month, if you had invested it over those 25 years, could have grown to around $1.3 million. So that bigger house doesn't just cost more each month. It can literally cost you over $1 million in retirement wealth. It's $1 million decision.
Let's look at how this plays out for two couples, David and Christine, and Robert and Jennifer. At age 40, they're in almost the exact same financial spot. But during their 40s, David and Christine went all in on lifestyle inflation. They bought the bigger house, they leased new luxury SUVs, and they took out Parent Plus loans for their kids' college. Robert and Jennifer, they made a conscious choice to fight that urge. They stayed put in their perfectly fine home, drove reliable used cars, and worked with their kids to find scholarships for a state school.
And now let's look at the scoreboard. By the time they're 65, David and Christine have about $685,000. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not going to be an easy retirement. Robert and Jennifer, just by making different choices in that same decade, ended up with $1.65 million. Remember, the difference wasn't their income, it was their decisions.
So you have to wonder, right? Did all that extra spending actually make David and Christine happier? Well, the research is pretty clear. Probably not. The thrill of the new house or the fancy car gives you a temporary high, but we adapt to our new normal incredibly fast. It's a well-known phenomenon. The spending didn't buy them lasting happiness, but it did permanently sabotage their future.
Okay, I know this can all sound a little intense, but this isn't about doom and gloom. It's about empowerment. So for this last part, let's talk about your future and your choice. We're going to break down some super clear, actionable advice you can use no matter how old you are right now. If you're in your 20s and 30s, listen up. You have the gift of seeing this coming. Build the savings habit now, even if it's small. And here's the big one. Define what enough looks like for you before you start making the big money. Now, if you're in your 40s, this is it. This is your moment. You need to audit every single major expense and ask what it's truly costing you. Every time you say yes to more lifestyle, you're saying no to future security. And if you're in your 50s or beyond, it's all about maximizing what you can still control. That means things like delaying Social Security to get a bigger check, or maybe downsizing your home to unlock that capital.
Resisting that urge to spend more in your 40s is hard. It feels like you've worked for it, like you deserve it, but I love this quote because it frames the choice perfectly. The discomfort of saying no and being a little more frugal, that lasts for maybe 10 years, but the reward, total financial freedom, that lasts for 30 years or more.
So let's end on this one thought. Picture yourself at age 70. Are you relaxed? Are you planning trips? Are you enjoying your grandkids without a financial care in the world? Or are you stressed? Are you worried about every medical bill and every trip to the grocery store? Both of those futures are possible, and the choice that decides which one you get, it isn't being made when you're 65. It's being made right now in your 40s. And that's not a scary thought. That's an incredible opportunity.